It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast, your weekly breakdown of Districts 1 and 2 in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney joined as always by Ryan Scaggs, wearing your Boise State. Is that just a t-shirt?
It's a long sleeve shirt that has a hood. I don't know. It's super comfortable. So
whoa,
yeah.
Slick. You know, if you wear something like that, you have to go jog. That's the rule.
That or lift, but lift with like your hood up and like headphones on.
Yeah, right. Like you're filming an Under Armour commercial.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, if you want to see Ryan's hoodie, you can check out the video version of this podcast at IdahoSports.com's YouTube channel or Facebook page. Audio only as well at IdahoSports.com and wherever you download your podcasts. All right, let's get into it. We had the first championship event of the 22-23 school year. State golf last week over in East Idaho. The 5A competition was in Rexburg. The 4A competition was in Idaho Falls. We didn't have any team champions or individual champions, but we still had a lot of noteworthy finishes. Let's start on the boys' side of action, where the Coeur d'Alene boys end up taking third place. Eagle won the championship. Madison was 2. Coeur d'Alene was 3. The Vikings continue their strong golf tradition.
Yeah, no, a great showing by the Vikings, and I believe they had either 1 or 2 golfers that finished in the top 10. So, not a bad showing. Obviously, that the championship team was paced by, I think, the medalist, if I'm not mistaken, too. So, it was a good showing for Coeur d'Alene. I mean, and obviously great weather. Fall golf in Idaho is probably my favorite. It's better than spring because it gets soggy. So I think that statewide we lucked out weather-wise, and hopefully they bring the state tournament north one of these years because there's some amazing courses up here too. But Coeur d'Alene boys with a decent showing there, third, and then Lakeland I believe had somebody finish. It was Hannah that finished 6th, I think, in that state in the boys side at 4A.
Yeah, so I'll get you caught up here. For Coeur d'Alene, Trey Nip finished tied for 8th. Grant Potter took 10th in the individuals, and then Carson King of Lewiston was the highest individual from up north. He took 7th overall, capping up an incredible regular season and postseason for him. On the boys' side, you did have Brady Hanna of Lakeland. He took 8th place.
8th place. There we go. Okay.
So that 5A boys individual championship came down to a kid from Madison and a kid from Eagle. Wheaton Ennis won the state title as a freshman, took 2nd last year as a sophomore. He was one of the favorites going in. He and Ashton Mcarthur from Madison were back and forth on that second day on Saturday. I'm going to share my screen real quick. This isn't North Idaho related, but this is so cool that I had to share this. I'm sharing this on all the podcasts this week. This is Ashton Mcarthur from Madison. And again, if you're watching the video version of this at IdahoSports.com's YouTube channel or Facebook page, make your screen full size so you can see this. Okay, this is Ashton Mcarthur celebrating his championship win, getting a hug in. This is all on his Instagram account, so if you're listening audio only, you can find him at Ashton Mcarthur 5 on Instagram. Here he is signing the green after his championship win, and this is the putt that won it. This was a 30-foot putt to win by 1 stroke over Wheaton Ennis of Eagle. Check this out, Ryan. Look at the bend on that.
Buries it. Are you kidding me?
And then here comes the best part. Ready for it? Oh, the chest bump.
That's awesome. Man, that's a dandy of a putt. Holy cow.
Yeah, dude, that's nails, isn't it? Oh, a 30-foot putt.
Wow.
To win.
That's clutch.
Yeah, to win the 5A title. That is like so awesome. I had to share that, even though it's a kid from Madison. I think all the North Idaho fans will enjoy seeing that. We had some good performances on the boys' side. On the girls' side, Molly Sibley of Lewiston had such a great season. She ends up taking 6th place overall. She was the only North Idaho girl to finish in the top 10. And then on the 4A girls' side, Sandpoint takes 3rd overall. Twin Falls wins the title. BK 2nd, Sandpoint 3rd.
Wasn't the medalist to the girls 4A? She won by like 16 strokes.
Yes, and she led all golfers. 5A, 4A, boys, girls, doesn't matter. She had 15 birdies.
Round. Yeah, that's an insane round.
Ava Schroeder from Twin Falls. And check this out, Ryan. She also plays soccer. at Twin Falls as well for the defending 4A champs. So she could be double dipping in the championships this fall. How cool would that be?
That'd be pretty impressive. That's a nice showing there too. I saw that score and that stood out. I was like, wait, hold on a second. Like that's not a normal, golf score that we see every day. I mean, even if you're watching like pro-ams, you don't see usually that many birdies too.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy for sure. North Idaho finishers in the top 10. You had Taylor Meyer from Sandpoint. She finished tied for 7th overall. And then the Bulldogs really filled in the teens and the 20s to help, carry them to that 3rd place finish. So golf season is in the books. Congrats to all of the great individual golfers and teams that had successful years. And then, of course, we still have 3A golf coming up this spring where Kellogg, Bonners Ferry, they're going to be kind of the favorites again. St. Mary's is always pretty good as well.
Yeah,
so
look out for our friends over at Genesis Prep too. They've got a couple decent golfers in their program too. They were young last year. They're going to be good this year too.
Genesis Prep is eternally young in everything. They just
it's a running joke. It's like, oh, they're young this year. It's like, well, what happens to everybody if they're always young? So like they found the fountain of youth over there in Post Falls.
Right. Yeah. We joke about that a lot here on the podcast for sure. All right, let's transition to district soccer. Let's get caught up on what's going on the pitch, as they say. Again, I'm going to share my screen so you can follow along with all the brackets on the video version of this podcast. Make your screen full size so you can see the brackets a little more clearly. If you're listening audio only, don't worry, you're in luck. We've got all the district brackets at our website, IdahoSports.com, boys and girls, not just up north, but districts from all around the state. So you can follow all of the teams everywhere. So let's go ahead and I'll share my screen. Let's start on the girls' side of action, and let's start with District 1-2 for 5A, the Inland Empire League, because this is where a bid has actually already been locked up. The Lake City Timberwolves are back, and they are out for blood after being disrespected statewide all year long. Here are the Timberwolves. We made a little faux pas last week.
I was going to say, you owe an apology to them too.
I do. So I'll take you a little bit behind the scenes here at IdahoSports.com. What I do here, podcasting is really like 10% of the job. The other 90% is like stuff on the website, like, refreshing the page and putting in the scores and schedules and all that stuff. And lately, my boss, Paul Kingsbury, and I have been trading off, who puts in scores on what day. And he was in charge of the scores for that particular night. And he put in the halftime score of that Sandpoint Lake City game. And Sandpoint was leading 1-0 at halftime. And so that's what I saw. And that's my bad. I need to double check stuff, certainly. But Lake City ended up winning that match 3-1. So
yeah,
they are still unbeaten.
We went off the air and I got blown up. A couple of different people like, no, not so fast. Like Lake City ended up winning that match. That was halftime. And I'm like, okay, like, sorry. But yeah, no, that the Lake City girls are, man, they're solid. I don't know how quietly you can go into a state tournament as a defending champ and not get the attention. And I think that's the way they want it, though, is that they're going to go in there like silent assassins into the state tournament again. And I like their team a lot. I really do. I think that they've got, great offense. They really attack well. So it'll be interesting to see how things kind of play out. I know that the Boise schools get a ton of attention, but Lake City's, sitting there to defending champ. So I'm going to go ahead and ride that wave through the state tournament.
Yeah, they just get no acclaim whatsoever. Lake City defeats Coeur d'Alene 5-1 last night in the district championship match. And now for Coeur d'Alene, they've got a play-in match against Centennial, the 5th place team from District 3. I'll tell you, Centennial is not bad. They beat Rocky Mountain early on in the season in what was a non-conference game down there. Coeur d'Alene's got the advantage in terms of the matches in Lewiston, so they've got a shorter distance to go, although it's not by that much. This is going to be, I'll admit, this will be a tough matchup for the Vikings. They're certainly capable of winning, but this is also a Centennial team that's pretty decent. So
yeah, no, the Centennial team, I think, is a little more, I don't want to say battle tested, but I don't want to sell out or sell short Coeur d'Alene in soccer, but I think that, it's a tall task to draw that in a play-in game. You get one chance to see each other, and that's kind of how things go. It'll be interesting to see how things turn up, but I mean, obviously we know what Lake City brings to the table. Coeur d'Alene girls have had a decent season. I think that I don't want to say they've been underwhelming, but they've just had a darn tough schedule too. I mean, you look at some of the quality of programs up here in North Idaho. It's really tough to run the table, especially if you go outside of conference and schedule some of those Washington schools. They're really good too. So it'll be I think it'd be a good match on Saturday for them and a chance to make it into the state tournament.
And the key match for Coeur d'Alene really came in the first round over Lewiston, right? The two sides had split in the regular season. It was the 2 versus the 3, and Coeur d'Alene gets that 1-0 win over Lewiston to advance to the district title match. And the Bengals season comes to an end. 2 really good teams. It was a shame somebody had to lose there. So we'll keep an eye on that. Coeur d'Alene in the play-in match against Centennial on Saturday. And then I wanted to check as well because the tournament is now seeded according to regular season max preps rating.
So it's real quick though, to tell you how good Lake City is. They had a monstrous win over Gonzaga Prep earlier a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
That Gonzaga Prep team has only, one other loss in the state of Washington. So that's how good Lake City is. That's what I'm saying. Like, they go quietly, but they're not getting a ton of attention. That Gonzaga Prep team is ranked in the top 5 in the state of Washington. That's 60 4A schools.
Yes. And I will tell you that Lake City will be the number 1 seed at the 5A girls state soccer tournament. They had the best max preps rating in the regular season. So Lake City will be the number 1 seed. That has served them well at times, right? They were, but last year, especially, I remember in boys basketball, Lake City was the number 1 overall seed, and that did not go well for them. So I don't know. It's tricky sometimes being that number 1 overall seed, but congrats to the Lake City girls. They will be the 1 seed at state for girls soccer. Let's move to boys district 1-2 action. The district match is actually today, Ryan. We're recording this on Wednesday, October 12th. The district title match will be later today at 3:30, 1 versus 2. Coeur d'Alene against Lake City. Both pretty much had an easy time in the opening round. The winner will advance to state. The loser will have to play the 5th place team from District 3. And I would give, whoever it is, Coeur d'Alene or Lake City, I give them a much better chance of advancing on the boys side. The SIC is not as strong in boys soccer this year. Yeah, no, I like, obviously Coeur d'Alene's the 1 seed going into that game. But they've played tough throughout the year. So it's you play a team so many times, it's, law of averages, can you catch them on a night where Lake City comes in and pulls the quote unquote upset. But I like both of these teams' chances at state. I like, the play-in game opportunity, like you said. Either of these teams, if they end up playing, on Saturday, I think that they get the win there. And they can both these teams can make some noise in the state tournament. Definitely. So we'll keep an eye on that. And next week, Ryan, we'll be doing a live state tournament preview show. We like to do this ahead of state where we go live on, it's an episode of the podcast, but we also go live on IdahoSports.com's YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter, where we interact with the fans. We'll take your comments, questions, shout outs to your favorite teams. I'm going to bring on Christian Wiener from up in your neck of the woods up north. He lives in Bonners Ferry. He's been writing the weekend preview for us all season long. He's really plugged into what's been going on statewide in soccer. So Christian and I are going to be breaking down the brackets Tuesday night, 7:00 Mountain, 6:00 Pacific time for the fans up north. And we're going to break down all the state tournament brackets for boys and girls soccer. If you can't be there live, I'll also drop this into the North Idaho Prepcast podcast feed. So that's where you're going to get your soccer content next week with the live preview show. But it should be a lot of fun.
Sweet. Sounds great.
Yep. So that's one less thing I'm taking off your plate, Ryan. You should be thanking me.
Man of many hats. Yes.
Yes, for sure.
You asked me to do play-by-play volleyball. We're going to have some struggles, but
right. But we'll obviously talk about, who won the match and who advanced and all that stuff during the state soccer preview show next week. Let's move to 4A on the girls' side. Moscow defeats Lakeland last night, 5-0. They will play Sandpoint in the district championship tomorrow, Thursday at 3:30. We wouldn't have it any other way, would we, Ryan? Moscow, Sandpoint. It's just like it was last year.
That's right. And hopefully Sandpoint's hoping for a different result than what happened last year. I think it's a little bit more evenly matched going into this affair this year, but we all know that Moscow surprised Sandpoint last year. I think, battle plan for the Bulldogs is to come in and take care, do what they do best. And that's, play stingy on defense and then offensively get their opportunities. And I think it's going to be a great match. I'm not going to pick a winner because I really feel that this, I don't want to just say anything's 50-50. I think the slight edge goes to the Bulldogs, but Moscow comes in obviously with history on their side too. So it'll be an interesting game.
And we talked about Sandpoint swept the regular season series, but they were tight. They were both 1-goal wins for the Bulldogs. It is really a shame that both of these teams can't go to state, Ryan, because when you look at the Max Preps rankings for the regular season, Sandpoint was 3rd overall. Moscow was number 1. If Moscow wins this match, they're the 1 seed at state. You're talking about, if Sandpoint completes the trifecta and gets the, and here I am going to curse Sandpoint again. If Sandpoint defeats Moscow, you're talking about the number 1 seed being at home for state. And that's what happened last year. Sandpoint was the number 1 team in Max Preps and didn't make it.
Well, that's just that just tells you how good that schedule is with playing those 5. It really benefits the 4A schools playing all of those 5A schools in the IEL. There's I think a huge benefit to that, but obviously we talk about what it does to the 5A schools. It kind of penalizes them a little bit, doesn't do them any favors, but competitive wise, the balance is there between all those programs. Really there's the outliers like Lakeland, but it's going to be, I think, a really competitive game. Moscow, if they pull off the victory and get the number 1 seed, I can't think of a better story, after what's gone on there for like the last couple of weeks in Moscow, going into that state tournament. That's huge. They played competitive against all the 5A schools. So, the Bears aren't a bad team by any means.
Yeah, I'll add one distinction to your point about it benefits the 4A schools to play those 5A IEL schools. It only benefits them if they win. And Sandpoint and Moscow racked up a lot of 5A wins this year in girls soccer. So that's where it helped them.
The likes of playing, they played really well against Lewiston and Post Falls. So it helps to get at least you got 2 victories apiece against each of those teams. So that does you some favors.
Definitely bankroll some wins there. Boys side, District 1-2. Moscow defeats Lakeland 5-1 on Monday. District championship is today, Ryan, as we're recording this. Sandpoint, the 1 seed, Moscow, the 2 seed. I think this one is not as tight as on the girls' side. No. I like Sandpoint quite a bit.
I like Sandpoint a lot. They're a really good team. I think outside of, they're even with Lake City as far as I think talent wise. They would have been, I think, number 2 in the 5A side of IEL. So it's, I think the Sandpoint team's really, really good. And, you look at record wise, they're right there with the Coeur d'Alene's and the Lake City. So they should be a really competitive game. And I like the Bulldogs' chances at state. They've got a really talented lineup. It should bode pretty well for the Bulldogs if they can get the victory today.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch. There were 2 teams in 4A boys soccer that went undefeated or unbeaten in the regular season. Sandpoint with 3 draws, but no losses. And Caldwell, who's always a strong program, 1 draw and no losses for Caldwell. But Sandpoint edges out the Cougars. Caldwell is 2 in the Max Preps ratings. Sandpoint 1. So Sandpoint wins. They're the 1 seed at state.
That's a big draw too, because you get on the opposite side when that happens, and that does you some favors as far as seeing what shakes out from Eastern Idaho too, on your draw as far as seeding goes in the bracket. That's a big deal to get that number 1 seed.
Definitely. How good is Caldwell? They have so many boys soccer players. Their football team is in shambles, right? They can't even compete in the SIC. They're an independent team, but they had so many boys soccer players. They had 2 full JV squads. They had a JV 1 and a JV 2 this year.
That's
How
insanity.
Crazy is that?
That's insanity.
That's
high school, but granted they have like 1,400 enrollment, but
they're a 5A school. Make no mistake about that.
Enrollment wise, they're 5A. For sure.
All right. And finally, let's get to the Intermountain League, the IML. Oh boy, we've got some good action heating up here. Let's start on the girls' side, where the opening round was on Monday. Bonners Ferry, the 3 seed, beats Grangeville, the 6 seed, pretty easily. Look at this other first round matchup right here. Priest River and St. Mary's. The game is 0-0 through regulation, the first overtime, the second overtime, and then it finally goes to penalty kicks. Priest River wins 4-3 on PKs and advances to the semifinals. That's just heartbreaking for St. Mary's that they were right there, but that's the way it goes. So now you got the semifinals on Friday. Coeur d'Alene Charter, the 1 seed, will play Priest River. The 4 seed, Timberlake, the 2 seed, will take on Bonners Ferry, the 3 seed. And then the winners will play on Saturday in the championship. 2 spots to state. So whoever wins these 2 semifinal matchups clinch their bids at state.
Yeah, but you want to keep getting those victories, obviously, because you want the higher seed at state. But no, I think there's a lot of competitive balance there. You look at the top. Well, we know what Coeur d'Alene Charter is, obviously. They're a buzzsaw. So it's kind of the de facto. I look at the other side of the bracket, Bonners Ferry and Timberlake. I think it's fitting that they're playing each other because really they're pretty balanced between the 2 programs. Timberlake's having a great year too. So, edge Tigers there, but I mean, who's going to be able to come out of that game and actually make some noise at state, obviously earning that second automatic bid. Coeur d'Alene Charter, I'm looking at them and it's like they're on a mission. They're playing kind of, I don't know, like they're angry at the world, I guess you could say. And it's going to set up for some great matches at state too, because there's some definitely very talented 3A teams at state in a very competitive girls bracket.
Yeah, I think when you talk about soccer coaches in the state of Idaho, I think the 2 that come to mind to me immediately as like the best among their peers are both at the 3A level. Richard Whitelaw at Sun Valley Community School, but also Stacy Smith at Coeur d'Alene Charter. She does such an incredible job with the Panthers year in, year out. Max Prep's rankings, there were 3 teams in 3A girls soccer that went undefeated in the regular season. Sugar Salem, Coeur d'Alene Charter, and the Cutthroats of Sun Valley, who had 1 draw but no losses. They are seated in that order. Sugar Salem 1, Coeur d'Alene Charter 2, Sun Valley 3. So Coeur d'Alene Charter would be the 2 seed overall if they got to state on the same side as the Cutthroats, potentially.
Let's look at Coeur d'Alene soccer and the state of that. I mean, look at the programs and what they're able to do on the girls' side between, the Lake City girls. You've got Coeur d'Alene Charter girls. Coeur d'Alene's competitive too. I mean, you talk about a full basket of just, solid players. They're there, and it kind of spreads out. It's something to keep your eye on for years to come because that youth program is so strong up here. But yeah, that's just something that kind of sticks out. It's like, oh yeah, Lake City's good. And then you're like, wait, Coeur d'Alene Charter's really good too. I mean, it kind of tells you that the competitive balance up north as far as the youth level is insane.
Yeah, and I think the facilities play a big part in that too. Best facilities by far in the state are up north for soccer. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. And then this is really the intriguing one because this is kind of a free for all, Ryan. The boys' side of the bracket. It did go chalk in the first round where Coeur d'Alene Charter, the 4 seed, beat St. Mary's, the 5 seed. Orofino, the 3 seed, beat Priest River, the 6 seed. Bonners Ferry, the 2 seed, beat Grangeville, the 7 seed. But now we've got this Final Four where it's Timberlake, the 1 seed against Coeur d'Alene Charter, the 4, and then the 2-3 matchup between Bonners Ferry and Orofino. I don't know. Throw the team names into a hat and see what comes out.
I mean, I think Timberlake gets the win over Coeur d'Alene Charter, but it's going to be a close match. And then, predicting the other side, gosh, I mean, you really realistically could put all 4 teams in a hat and draw, and that's the way it goes. Like, you just don't know on this one. I think the edge obviously goes to the Tigers a little bit on this side, but Bonners Ferry's had a good season too. I mean, they're a team to watch. Orofino's playing hot down the stretch, so it's kind of like take your pick there in that game. And I think either team gives. I mean, it could be 4-3 coming out of this. I mean, realistically, let's be real. That's just how balanced the IML was this year at the 3A level.
Yeah. So, and again, this is why I say you throw them in a hat because Timberlake did beat Coeur d'Alene Charter in the first matchup of the year in August 4-1, but then they tied 1-1 on September 21st. So they battled to a draw. So, and then you look at, the other matchup, Bonners Ferry and Orofino, They played twice this year as well. Bonners Ferry got a 2-0 win over Orofino, and then an identical 2-0 win over Orofino. So, but the Maniacs you talked about have really picked up some steam here as they've gone in. So I don't know. This is going to be wide open. It wouldn't shock me to see any of these teams win on Friday.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they're all playing on turf too. So I think that's going to add to, the team speed's going to come into play now. It's like when you're on an even surface, it's going to make things interesting. I think who has the athletes, I think, is where it's really going to show up now. It could go to goalkeeping.
Yeah, definitely so. Bonners Ferry has a lot of experienced players that are hungry to get to state, so we'll have to wait and see. All right, let's talk volleyball real quick. Ryan, you wanted to touch on the White Pine League in 1A.
Who wants to win it other than? We look at Troy. Obviously, they've only got one loss on the year, but I think you've got 3 other teams now with at least 10 wins, kind of jumbled at the top of that conference between Logos, Genesee, Potlatch. Are all right there, so that's an interesting. It's all like kind of like drawing straws who wins on a given night too. It's just really weird how they've been playing, but it shows obviously how competitive the conference is. You look at D1 or 1A D1 up here. Wallace is right there again. They're kind of floating around on the outside. Obviously, we're looking at the auto bids now too this year, so it makes things interesting on the volleyball side. But yeah, obviously you look at Lakeland's already clinched, but even though they lost to Moscow the other night, they're still the number 1 seeded districts. The 5A side, we know what Lake City's been doing. They've been competitive, and Post Falls is good too. Coeur d'Alene's kind of right there as well, as far as the top 3 go at 5A. So it should be an interesting district tournament coming up.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, the representation for volleyball this year: 5A gets 1.5 bids. So second place will have a chance to get in via a play-in match against a team from Boise. 4A gets 1. Just the 1 district champ. We think that's going to be Lakeland,
which is
3A,
tough because Moscow's been playing good. That's the problem. They could deserve a way. I wish you could see them play a playing game too, but that's not how it works. But go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. 3A, it's just Bonners Ferry and Timberlake. Yep. 1 bid, something would really have to go wrong for Bonners Ferry not to get that slot to state. They've been playing so well. An upset we would have to chronicle in detail. It's not anything against Timberlake. It's been a rough season for the Tigers in volleyball, certainly. 2A gets 1.5 bids. St. Mary's
is good.
Yes, they're so good in girls sports. Softball is always really good. Basketball, they're always competitive. Volleyball, no exception. Grangeville, Orofino, kind of the next 2 best, and Kellogg's right there in the mix as well. That half bid could go to any of those teams. It wouldn't surprise me. White Pine League, or 1A D1 District 1, the champion gets its own bid to state. No play-in game this year. What a novel concept. We like Genesis Prep, right? We like G Prep.
But they've been played tough too. That's the thing that we're looking at. Wallace has played them tough. So, I still lean to the Jags getting in and getting that bid, but it wouldn't surprise me if the minors show up. It really wouldn't.
The White Pine League, we talked about all those great teams, right? Troy is 14-1, Potlatch 13-4, Genesee 11-3, Logos 10-5. Only 2 teams get to go to state from this district. That's it. So it's a true where you can lose and still challenge through the back door and challenge for that second spot. So that's going to be compelling volleyball. I believe that's at Lewis and Clark State.
LCSC in the Activity Center.
Yeah, that's where the White Pine's going to be at for D1. And then at the 1A D2 level, it's the same. District 1 gets the 1 bid. It looks like Clark Fork, certainly. The Wampus Cats, after just missing out last year, are going to be back at state. And then 2 bids from the White Pine League because there's 6 teams competing. We like Kendrick. I'm not really sure who gets that second bid. Everybody's looked good at times this year.
Deary gets the second bid.
Yeah. Nez Perce is always sneaky. I know. St. John Bosco started hot. They've kind of hit a lull, but I don't know. It's going to be some really compelling volleyball down the stretch, and we'll look at volleyball district brackets on next week's edition of the Prepcast. All right, let's wrap up with football, where again, fans at IdahoSports.com, if you go to the homepage right now, I've updated my latest bubble watch. I got lots of emails like, hey, when are you going to come out with the new bubble watch? I was like, it takes time, it's like 3,000 words I'm writing. So, it's not something I can produce overnight, but it's up on the site now. The big story is in 5A football, Post Falls with that 42-35 win over Lewiston.
That's huge.
Takes a huge step forward.
They've got a tough game Friday night against Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene's defense is, one of the best units, I think, in 5A, but their offense is finding some struggles, that's for sure. Special teams and defense, though, for Coeur d'Alene has kept them in a ton of ball games this year. Post-fall, it's weird because the last game I had them, they lose to Lakeland, where, Isaac McCown, the quarterback, struggled the whole night, but Bustamante went off for over 200 yards rushing in a loss. And so we see them come back and bounce back and beat Lewiston, who I picked as the IEL 5A favorite. I still really like the Bengals, but winning that game, the thing I think that gets overlooked is how good Post Falls defense is, especially their pass rush. I was pulling some stats last night because I'm starting to compile my de facto list for all North Idaho football and everything. One thing that stood out to me was Trevor Miller, the defensive end for Post Falls, has like 34 tackles on the year, but he's got 39 quarterback hurries on the season so far, and he's got 6 sacks. So you look at him at defensive end, and he's just an absolute nightmare. And that's the thing I go back and I'm like, yeah, every time Lakeland passed the ball, they got sacked in that game 4 times against Post Falls. They only had 9 passing attempts. So like that tells you okay, the Post Falls defensive line, they reach home. And they're decent in the secondary in the back end. Dylan Wolf's a really good corner. They got a couple other guys back there as well that play really tough. And then Cole Cripps at middle linebackers got over 70 tackles this year already. That Post Falls team, defensively, I think is just really, really under the radar, how good that defense is. And if their quarterback's on and they can get the running game behind it with Bustamante, they're a really, really good team. And they showed it beating, obviously, Lewiston on Friday night. And that was a back-and-forth affair, too. But it wasn't close for a while. Lewiston made it close late.
Yeah, and now with the latest projections, Lewiston would be out of the playoffs if the playoffs started today, which is just crazy to think about. Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls play Friday night on IdahoSports.com, so you'll definitely want to tune into that, Ryan. You're going to be on the call of that game. Winner of that will be in the driver's seat for the regular season title. The Vikings we talked about, they need to get one of those 2 auto bids. They just don't have enough 5A wins to get an at-large slot, so the Vikings got to play well these last 2 games against Post Falls and Lewiston. The Trojans are in the best spot, right? They've got enough
for sure
5A wins bankrolled that they could get an at-large bid. And for Lewiston right now, they kind of need to get the auto bid as well because they are 500 in terms of their wins against 5A opponents. They're 2-2. They've got the wins over Capital and Clarkston, and then the losses at the Rocky Mountain Rumble, and of course to Post Falls. Now the problem is
Clarkston's a small school. I don't know if that's helping their rankings at all. Clarkston's only got an enrollment of 800, so I don't know if that's going to get them a 4A.
Or maybe it was Pendleton. I was like, it was
Pendleton's got the 5A. Yeah, Pendleton has the 5A enrollment size.
Yeah, that's what it was. But the I guess what it comes down to is Lewiston could get help if Rigby takes the second auto bid from the East. Right now, just on the standings, Rigby would grab an at-large bid. But if Rigby and Highland can squeeze out Madison, then Lewiston leapfrogs Madison for that at-large spot. So there's still a path for Lewiston to get there. The easiest way, of course, is to just win. But they could get some help from those teams in the East and still get a spot.
But Lewiston's got a good defense. I don't know what was going on in that game with Post Falls. Post Falls just gives people headaches offensively because they play so fast-paced. That if they're on and they're able to move the ball, it's really tough to scheme them because they're multiple. But also they run no huddle. So if you're not getting the ball from them, you're not forcing them to go 3 and out. You're going to start pulling your hair out defensively against Post Falls. The Bengals on the back end are really good in the secondary. They're good up front. It's been the linebacking course kind of been like if they're getting Post Falls' offensive line, I think is deceptively good. They're not going to wow you getting off the bus, but they just get good, clean blocks, especially in the zone scheme. So it comes down to Lewiston. Drew Hottinger's had a great season. He's got some weapons around him between James White and you look at like Jelinek and some of the other kids that are out there as well, there's guys that you have to account for on every play. And then Lathan, the running back's been serviceable too. He's been pretty dang good. So it'll be, I like Lewiston still a lot more than Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene, I think, has yet to really show me much on offense. Their defense has shown a ton. Shea Robertson is having a monster season at Mike linebacker. But yeah, it's, DeGraw's doing really great up front at defensive end too. So, but that, when you look at the back end, they've got 12 team interceptions for Coeur d'Alene. So like defensively, we know they're fine. But what can they get put together offensively? And that's where the struggles have really been for the Vikings. So I still like, Post Falls. I think, I can't pick a game that I'm going to be calling this weekend. I don't really know if I really want to do that because I don't want to show favoritism.
Right.
But let's just say if Post Falls runs the table, I think they're going to be sitting pretty good. I don't want to say it's a win and you're in game this week between Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls. If Coeur d'Alene can get the victory, I think that's enough to get them over the hump. But they still have to beat the Bengals, and we could be looking at another tiebreaker 2 years in a row.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. I never count out Coach Sean Amos.
I know
he's
a wizard, man.
Oh, he's so good. It's hard, but I agree with you. When I look at the eye test, I've seen Lewiston in person this year. I've seen Coeur d'Alene in person this year. I've done a game each of theirs. I haven't seen Post Falls in person, but I've went back and watched the film, and to me, it's Post Falls, Lewiston, and then Coeur d'Alene third. But again, Coach Amos always does a great job, so that's going to be fascinating. 4A, Sandpoint wins the big matchup with Lakeland, and they win it pretty easily. And now Sandpoint, they're both going to get in the playoffs, but the difference is Sandpoint's going to get a top 8 seed. Lakeland is going to get a bottom 8 seed. Is the way it's working this year. So Lakeland will have to hit the road for the playoffs. Yeah,
and that's, unfortunate. For a season, the Hawks have been so good, but man, hats off to Coach Knowles. That scheme Friday night, it looked like Lakeland they came out with their hair on fire and just went right down their throat. Opening drive, they went, 76 yards for a touch, like just right down the field with 1 yard score by Lautzenheiser. And I'm like, oh, Lakeland's here. All right. And then they get the turnover right away. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good for Sandpoint. It's like kind of disaster. They got the stop there. And, Brandon Fury and I, who were on the call, kind of said, like, if Lakeland gets the score, I think it seems weird that's going to be such an early hinge point in the ball game. But if Sandpoint can get the stop, I think the Bulldogs could come back. We haven't seen them on offense yet. And Parker Pettit he was a machine on Friday night. You just watched him and it was like, I looked at him like, yeah, this is the best player in North Idaho. Like just watching what he did. And that's no slight to John Cornish because Cornish is an insane player and he got hurt, came back and still rushed for over 140 yards. He went out with a knee injury. He was out for 3 series, came back taped up and still ran. That's how good he is. But Parker was just, masterful. Like I don't want to say anybody ever plays a flawless game, but his incompletions, the few that he had, they were drops. They weren't they were on the money. There was nothing he really missed. But Sandpoint just, I don't want to say that they played just to top to bottom. They won every facet of the game.
And now big picture, you look at the 5 district champs get the top 5 seeds automatically. And then all of the auto bid teams, receive the top 8 seeds. So the way it would work right now is Sandpoint would be the 3 seed overall, which is a pretty good setup for them. They were what were they last year? The 2 seed, right?
They were the 1 seed last year.
Okay.
Yeah. They were the top seed going into state.
Yeah. That's crazy to think about. So yes. And now as I'm looking at this, it's actually just changed again where Sandpoint would now be the 2 seed. So I've got to update my post because all of a sudden now Sandpoint is.
That's what I was saying. Losing that game to Colville actually kind of helped them.
Oh no! Wait! That was last year. Sorry, I wasn't.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, I was going to say that game, losing that game to Colville almost helped them in the rankings, in my opinion, because Colville's enrollment size is so small and they're not having the greatest season. It probably actually didn't hurt them not having that game. Instead of actually playing it, even if they had won. But
yes. Okay. So yes. So the way it would work right now is Sandpoint would be the 3 seed. Skyline is 2. Bishop Kelly is 1. I'm just not sure that Sandpoint's going to be able to leapfrog either of those 2 teams. So Sandpoint pretty much locked in as that 3 seed.
They've got Moscow Friday, and that's but we kind of know the result. But the interesting part of it was we know that the 20-point victory matters, right? 20 points or more. And they kept at the end, they ended up going for the touchdown instead of just kind of coasting in. They ended up getting the score. And I think that was a smart move on coach's part to, if they still have that rule in, I don't know, but at least from what I remember of the Max Preps rankings, 20-point wins counted for something.
I believe I think 15 is the max.
15. Okay. Well, they went in and they punched in the touchdown with like a minute and a half left to kind of coast on that one.
For sure. Lakeland is 7th overall in the Max Preps ratings right now. But like we said, the top 8 automatically go to the 8 auto bids, and there's only one auto bid from up north. So Lakeland gets pushed down into the bottom, where Lakeland would be the 11 seed right now. So the matchups would be Sandpoint, the 3 seed, hosting Hillcrest, the 14 seed. We like Sandpoint there. Lakeland is the 11 seed, would go to Twin Falls, the 6 seed. I like Lakeland in that matchup.
Lakeland. Absolutely.
And then that would set up, guess what, in the quarterfinals, Lakeland at Sandpoint.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but at the same time, I like Lakeland getting a victory there against Twin. I think that if that happened this week, I mean, I'd take the Hawks. Obviously, the health of Cornish is the question mark. Calder's back at full strength. But the one thing about Lakeland is that, the passing game, they just can't seem to get much going in that scheme, and they become one-dimensional really quickly. And if the running game's off a little bit, they struggle, but luckily they've got one of the better offensive line units in North Idaho.
Definitely. And for the moment, big picture, it looks like Sandpoint and Skyline would be on the same side of the bracket, with Sandpoint having to travel to probably Holt Arena for a possible semifinal showdown rematch of the championship game from last year. 3A, it's been long enough. I've neglected Bonners Ferry long enough. This team is
right?
for real. They are.
I mean, they're still undefeated. And then they go and shut out Kellogg. Come on. I mean, that's like one of the most potent offenses in the state.
So I went back and watched the film of that. Bonners Ferry is so good at the power rush game. They line up in essentially what looks like an I formation. They've got a kind of a lead blocker. They run the ball. They control the clock. They're really solid fundamentally. Yeah. Blake Rice does a tremendous job, piloting the offense at quarterback. I got an email last week from Cal Bateman, our good friend Cal up there in
I was wondering.
In Bonners Ferry. He said, I was looking at your Bubble Watch post, and right now I've got Timberlake into the playoffs as well as an at-large team. He said, do you really think both teams from up north are going to get in? Because I think that, fans are so used to it all hinges on the one game at the end of the year, and we're only going to get one team in. And I said, no, both teams are comfortably in. I think Timberlake is still comfortably in no matter what happens. Yeah. In that regular season finale next week with Bonners Ferry. And then Cal also mentioned, hey, last year for state baseball, I loved hearing you guys give Ryan a hard time about his prediction of Timberlake beating Bonners Ferry. He had a lot of fun with that. So shout out to Cal up there in Bonners Ferry. But yeah.
And I believe his kid's the starting either left or right tackle. I'm trying to remember. But yeah, his Trey. But yeah, no, it's that Bonners Ferry team. I mean, I think that they're getting such a little credit, and they're I want to say a mirror image of Lakeland's offense, but they're both very, very, very similar. Just ball control. They don't get behind the sticks. They're able to get 4 or 5 yards on first down, puts them down second short, and like you said, Rice does a great job of commanding that offense. It's like the perfect position as a coach. It's like don't put your quarterback in a position to have to do too much. And I think that the thing that also doesn't get seen a lot is that kid can kick, and having a kicker, especially late in the season in tight ball games, that does you some favors. And we saw him hit a field goal against Kellogg. And if you're having that weapon in your hip pocket late in a game, if you're 25, 30 yards out, that can be the difference in a ball game.
Definitely. So right now, if the playoffs started today, Bonners Ferry would get the 3 seed. The 5 district champs get the top 5 seeds overall. The top 2 seeds get a first round bye. Homedale is 1. South Fremont is 2. Bonners Ferry would be 3, but they would play, the worst team that's in the 14th seed right now. That's Wood River, which is a 4A team masquerading as a 3A team. But I won't get into that. But yes, Bonners Ferry and Timberlake both in good positions still.
Well, let's go back to that South Fremont team. We've seen them before this year. We saw them in the first game taking on Timberlake. Obviously, that's game 1 out of the chute. And that was a very competitive game. And I think you look at that, and I don't think I'd be too scared if I was obviously, Bonners Ferry to draw, the same side as a South Fremont or something like that in the playoffs. Um, I think that's a winnable game for the Badgers, especially the way they play offense. They play defense with offense too, and they play really good defense as well. So the Badgers, I think, are a scary team. I definitely would not want to play them in the state playoffs, especially if it's an outside game. If it's, kind of nasty weather or cold or something like that, like we tend to see in North Idaho or other areas around the state, the Badgers are a sneaky team, in my opinion, because they play so soundly and they just don't turn the ball over very much. They're a team I absolutely, as a coach, would scare the crap out of me.
Yes, definitely. Okay, and let's talk about, on the other side of the coin now for Kellogg. I think the polish on the apple is starting to come off a little bit with this Kellogg team, where they're now 4-3. Now they've played a very challenging schedule, certainly, and they're still 2-0 in the conference. They're still the favorites to win the league there, but I think there's kind of been a formula to beat Kellogg. It's control the ball, keep that offense off the field, and the Wildcats were plagued by, they had some drop passes, they had some, penalties have kind of been a problem for Kellogg at times this year. I still think Kellogg's very good. But the shine has come off just a little bit, right?
The crazy part is like I said, I've been doing looking at stats, is that, receiving, Colby Luna's over 1,000 yards receiving. And then Varric Meredith has, I think, over 400 or 500 yards receiving. Throwing the ball that Ripley Luna's thrown for over, I think he's thrown for 2,000 yards this year already. If he's not there, he's close to it. His total offense, I think, is over 2,000 yards on the year already. But it's, what happened? Like, how do you get shut out with that kind of offense?
Right.
And that's the part. It's like, it's feast or famine. And, I look at it as if they're going to be no huddle, fast paced, spread you out and chuck the ball. But if you're not getting catches, or you're getting your catches within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage and the other team can tackle really well, you don't want to be a no huddle or a pass only team and be caught in 3rd and 7 a lot, or 3rd and 6, to where you're called what we are behind the sticks. And it happens to post fall sometimes. I would equate it to kind of that view, is that if you're going to run no huddle or run a quick offense, you better be able to back it up by playing really good defense. And that's something I think that's been the Achilles heel. We know that Kellogg can get takeaways on defense, but can they stop the long, methodical running attack of teams that we tend to see kind of around North Idaho? And that's been the question mark. And I think they got exposed a little bit by Bonners Ferry, who, by their own right, Bonners Ferry is really good. But I think Kellogg's got a little bit of exposure, I think, that, might get exploited if they don't shore some things up.
Yeah, and now the second bid, there's 2 auto bids out of District 2, and really that's what it's going to come down to, the 2 auto bids, and that's it. St. Mary's took a big step with an 18-6 win over Grangeville on Friday night. St. Mary's now finishes the year with Priest River and Orofino, and the Lumberjacks, they've only got the 1 win against Grangeville last week, but they could play themselves, by winning the games they should over these final 2 weeks. The Lumberjacks will be in the playoffs.
Yeah, and and that's a great opportunity for Coach Tuft with that crew, because I know that there's been some, especially what we saw the last couple of years with, COVID going in and out of the program and kind of wreaking havoc. He had some forfeits and, a bright spot for the team to build on. I think that, they've got a good set of kids there that have continued to just show up week in and week out, and it'd be a great reward for that team to make the playoffs. And then one thing at 3A or 2A I wanted to give a shout out was Matthias Mclean from Priest River having an absolutely insane season. He should be an all-state player. If he's not getting enough attention, I want to bring some attention to him, because he's got almost 80 tackles on the year so far. He's got an interception, and then offensively, he's been their unit. He plays tight end, he plays running back, he comes in and plays wildcat quarterback. He's been basically the entire team for the Spartans, and he's just having a fantastic senior season, and capped it off with getting a scholarship offer and committing to the Vandals. So that's a good pickup for Coach Eck at Idaho, getting Matthias Mclean from Priest River.
Coach Eck's doing a great job with the Vandals. We could talk about Vandal football for some time here on the Prepcast. Yes, big shout out to Matthias Mclean. He's had a great season. Okay, 8-man, we'll go very quickly through this. Big story here is White Pine League's only going to get 3 teams into the playoffs, and that is a shame because there's like 5 that probably deserve to be there.
Jack Driscoll alone needs to be in the playoffs because that kid is a machine from Logos.
Short of Logos running the table, I don't think it's going to happen. And even then,
I know.
Logos finishes with Troy and Prairie. Logos would need help.
Yeah, 2 winnable games.
Yeah, but at that point, Logos would need help. They would need Potlatch or Clearwater Valley or somebody else to lose. Basically, Kamei's in, right? They're 5-0 in league, 6-1 overall. Clearwater Valley. Wow, what a win over Potlatch last Thursday night. Kind of like the Lakeland game. Potlatch goes down on their opening drive and scores. They get nada the rest of the way. The Rams said
goose egg down the stretch.
Enough of that. They're comfortably in second place, 4-1 in the league, 5-2 overall. Prairie at the moment is still in third. They and Potlatch are tied with 3-2 league records. Prairie got that 56-52 win over Potlatch earlier in the season. So right now the Loggers would be out. Lapway beat Prairie last week though, and now Lapway is in the position where they can play themselves into the playoffs. They finish
Terrell Ellenwood. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. They play Potlatch on Friday night. If Lapway wins that game, they all of a sudden vault into third place in the league standings.
And that Lapway team is peaking at the right time. Terrell Ellenwood Jones is playing out of his mind. I think he had like 197 yards rushing and threw for like another 140. And Elias Yearout has been showing up, and I mean that Lapway team is starting to peak at the right time. I think it took them time kind of warming up a little bit to find their identity, and they're finding their playmakers. That's for dang sure.
Yeah, so what a shame that only 3 teams are going to get in. There's just no way in the Max Preps ratings, a Lighthouse Christian team that's 1-5 because of the league they play in.
No.
They get boosted, and I just don't see a way that.
It's sad because you've got like such great playmakers in the White Pine League. I mean, each team's got somebody. Like you can even throw out like Angus Jordan's having a monster season when he's healthy, and like from Genesee. And every team's got somebody, and it's been competitive as all get out. It's a shame that somebody's going to get left at home because like I said, Jack Driscoll's numbers are insane. Like they are like video game numbers that he's had on the season so far. The signal caller for Logos.
Yeah, it's been crazy. 1AD2. There's nothing to talk about. Kendrick played another Washington school. They
quit in the second quarter. That team quit in the second quarter.
Yeah, this happened earlier. They played Wilbur Creston. Keller.
Yeah.
They called it off in the third quarter. This game didn't even get to halftime. Kendrick, from what I read, the Lewiston Tribune did a very nice job of kind of summarizing what happened here. But Lane Clemenhagen, who's a dude, was making some pretty big hits and all legal. But it's one of those things where the parents were concerned about player safety. I think the perception from the Washington school, and I'm trying to remember what the name of the team was. I'm not as well versed on my
Liberty Bell, I believe.
Liberty Bell. The bell got rung a couple of times for Liberty Bell, and
there was a crack in it. Yeah,
right.
Dad joke.
That's good. I think the parents thought that Kendrick was like cheap shotting. They weren't. It was all clean football, but it's just. Kendrick is way ahead of Liberty Bell, but they're having to play these Washington teams. Now they're playing this week Toccoa Rosalia. Am I getting that right?
Rosalia. Yeah, Tico Rosalia.
Okay, they're supposed to play them this week, and you're like, why is Kendrick playing all these Washington schools? They have league games. I believe Timberline forfeited against Kendrick. I didn't double check that, but they were supposed to play Timberline last week and didn't, and now they play. Kendrick is still playing Deary in the regular season finale, but Timberline is nowhere on Kendrick's schedule. So I have to assume they forfeited that game. They're like, nope, we want no part of that. Timberline is going to play Lewis County next Friday in a game that will decide the second bid to the playoffs. That's a closer game now because Ty Hambley, Lewis County's stud quarterback, is hurt. And so Lewis County barely gets a win last week over Deary. That's going to be fascinating. But for Kendrick now, there's rumblings of this game against Tico Roselia may not happen either. Nobody wants to play Kendrick right now. I feel really bad for Coach Zane Hobart because he's got a good team. It's kind of like the Sandpoint thing, but nobody wants to play him.
Yeah, he's got a great team around him, and that's, you look at Ty Kep, and he hasn't played a full game since the Oakley game, and he's got crazy numbers. And then you look at on the back end, like Jagger Hewitt in the secondary, he's got a monster season. And up front, I was talking to Coach Greg Frisbee. He's one of their coordinators. He's one of the assistant coaches with Coach Hobart. And I was like, so who's your best lineman? And he's like, it's really hard. It's like picking your favorite child because they're good. But he's like, I really do have to give a shout out. He said like Dallas Morgan, like the junior. He's like, he would play at the 5A level. He's like, and he would start at the 5A level. He's that good, technique wise and size wise. I mean, I think he's like 6'3" or 6'4", 250. Just a big kid. He's just a bulldozer. You wonder why they can run the ball so effectively and do what they want. Well, look at that offensive front. What they've got, they're all over 200 pounds and they can move dudes. So Kendrick, I don't know if they're going to get challenged really down the stretch. I don't see it coming even in the playoffs. Stranger things happen in 8-man football, but gosh, that Tiger team is so stinking good, and they're going to be good for a couple more years.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun to watch them once they get to the playoffs and can put all this regular season nonsense behind them. But we will wait and see. And okay, we went super long on the podcast this week, but
we had a lot to talk about. So
yeah, I'm really sorry about that, Ryan.
I'm glad we started early.
Yeah, no doubt. Things will get less chaotic. I mean, we're at this confluence where all the fall sports are still going, and slowly it's kind of like Survivor, right? We're going to vote. We voted golf off the island. They're gone.
Swimming's next, and then soccer. Get out of here.
Yeah, until there's one, person left, which is football. So we'll get
who gets the rose at the end. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
Bachelor,
right. So yes, we will end it there. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and hanging with us extra long today. There was a lot to cover. And as always, IdahoSports.com is going to have way more info than we could possibly talk about here. So just check the website every day. New stuff popping up all the time. Ryan, enjoy your game on Friday night. Should be a good one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely. Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in to the North Idaho Prepcast, everybody. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.